We don't have any cool opening animation, Charles, but
As of yet.
you know, when we have a movie that I like, got to do something a little bit special. I actually just saw this movie not that long ago, but we've got some different actors in this.
Well, where's my royalty check?
Exactly. Well, the thing that's actually cool, let's spend a minute going over this. I don't know, I guess you're not really an Avengers fan, Charles? I don't know.
That's, yeah.
Yeah. So let's explain first of all who we've got here. This is, you know, the most recent Avengers movie is like the culmination of the biggest comic book, you know, whatever in history. And it's basically about the Avengers saving the world from this all-powerful being, Thanos, who wants to, you know, just basically destroy all life on Earth. So we've got our friend B-Rock, Barry Obama, who's got chin for days, as Thanos here, and you are depicted as the god of thunder. You get to chop his head off with an axe. But of course, the leader is President Trump. The Iron Man suit's a little tight around his neck, but it looks good. We've got, I wanted to depict, you know, you gave me a lot of input on this as far as who should be the many faces here, and when I sort of ruminated over all the choices, I felt that the citizen activists, journalists, lawyers, we're really the ones who are doing the most of the heavy lifting to protect the Constitution and the presidency. So I've depicted General Michael Flynn as the Iron Patriot, with his lawyer, of course, Sidney Powell, as, Scarlett Johansson. I forget what this character's name is, but she's basically just like...
I got nothing.
Yeah, girl power kicking ass.
I got nothing.
So that was good for Sidney Powell. And then we've got Larry here as Captain America, Dr. Corsi playing the role of Dr. Bruce Banner, because in this movie he's taking control of the Hulk and he's, you know, the doctor the whole time. And then we've got our friend Juanita Broderick as Captain Marvel, who is actually the hero of the whole movie.
There you go. And I think it's fair to say that when we look back at this insanity that has been going on, I would argue since at least 1989, maybe before that. Yeah. Where we have a whole bunch of academics providing a cover for ruthless people like Soros and other investors like him, and amoral politicians like Bill Clinton and many others across the political spectrum, selling us a pile of garbage that this unregulated...
He looks toothless in this picture.
He should be. He should be toothless. Selling us a pile of garbage about how unregulated globalism is going to make each of us better off, when in fact the only people it's making better off are the people who weren't billionaires in 1989 who are mega billionaires today. And we've been sold a load of rubbish, and the people selling the rubbish understood perfectly well that those in the corporate-owned media and those graduates of journalism school don't know how to count. They don't understand economics, they don't understand business, many of them don't understand, and they certainly don't understand investing. So what they know about in their journalistic world is that there are a limited number of established pipes, and they control what flows through those pipes. So
sewage.
Exactly, unfortunately sewage. But you know, there's only so many Sunday shows, there are only so many 6 o'clock news hours, there are only so many analysis shows that people will watch, and they decide who gets on that show and who doesn't, and they get to characterize an opinion they don't like as a conspiracy theory, or laud somebody who should be actually in jail.
Like Adam Schiff?
Sid Blumenthal.
Oh, yes.
And you know, before we get into it a little bit, or as we get into it, I want to talk about an experience I had last night, but we'll get to that in a second. I'm just watching MSNBC. I don't know why I do this to myself, but we'll get to that in a second. But I think the art department, once again, on short notice, has done standout work here, and I think this adds to a master. We now have, I think at the peak of my 15th, 16th, and 17th century map collection, I think I had 140 framed maps. Each one museum quality framed. Forget what the maps cost. The framing was expensive.
Did you use GK framing?
I used a specialist framing.
Gold Feather Kahan, whatever?
No. There was a guy, he's out of business. It actually used to be right near on 16th Street between 5th and 6th, there used to be a very old framer, a craftsman who just had done framing for my family, and I just decided I'd be nice to the guy and would come in, with a look. Can you do these? Can you do those? I just kept him busy for 3 or 4 years.
Nice. Well, but now, Charles, we've got an even greater collection of poster images from the 188 episodes of Sunday with Charles, and Charles Ortel is closing in, the newly reinstated Wednesday edition. People can watch each of these shows. I certainly hope the FBI will watch each of these, if they need transcripts, because I do believe any one of these could be selected and entered as evidence into some sort of investigation or criminal prosecution. I would gladly provide transcripts of the whole entire thing to the FBI.
Well, I think, isn't there a simple way to do that? They just...
YouTube does it automatically,
yeah.
but you have to download it, because people can watch with. I guess we've never discussed this feature. Let's take a look at it. We always tell people, or we've recently taken to telling people how they can access your slide presentations by coming over here, clicking on the Show More, and then tapping on the Download Charles's Presentation link. That's going to bring you directly to the PDF, which you've created hundreds of, or over 100 of. And people can look at that and follow along, or download it and print it out and do whatever they want. But if people are interested, if you're hard of hearing, you probably know this already, but you can just click on this little closed caption button, and you can already see the thing is generating Dankeschön real-time closed captions. So that can be downloaded as a transcript if the FBI is interested in that.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a good suite of images, actually, and obviously I think the presentations are timely, and in time it'll be interesting to go back and look and see what we said when, and what actually happened, and why is it taking so long. Again, I never have a chance. In fact, I don't think I've ever had a moment to look at the comments, but I think we get quite a few comments. Some are helpful, some not so helpful. But
I've been trying to respond to as many comments as possible. It's a lot of
work.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on.
A lot of work. So at some point, I'm beginning to review options for where I want to have an apartment in a warm climate, not in this country. And planning ahead, what I would do, I think, is I would have a number of TV screens and just rotate the images at random on some of these screens.
You'd be like Bill Gates.
Well, I don't intend to be like Bill Gates.
Wait, but he had that, I remember years ago hearing that, before big TVs were a thing, he had these picture frames that you'd show up and that would show art that you like. He'd ask you who's your favorite artist and stuff, nice. And the house would kind of Star Trek style modify itself to suit your mood.
Yeah, well, not trying to do that, but anyway, today we're getting closer and closer, and I think this will be our final show before November 15th, which is Friday.
Wow.
And our mutual friend, who shall remain unnamed, pointed out to me that there's a chance that today's date might actually be the Ides of November. So when you look in the ancient Roman times, the Ides were not necessarily the 15th of the month. And in fact, we believe it is, in fact, the Ides of November are today, the 13th of November. And so a lot has been put in place. Japanese have a phrase I like to use. It's called nemawashi. It means basically preparing the ground. And so when I first started on this back in February of 2015, I quickly appreciated that the story could be a large story in that it involved centrally the Clintons and the Obamas and the Bushes, and in that it would be connected to a looming election. I certainly did not anticipate that Donald Trump would actually decide to enter the race, would persevere, would win the nomination and then the election, nor did I imagine that any connected bunch of Americans could be as diabolically evil as to damage relations with multiple countries around the world in an effort to steal or change the results of the 2016 election and really nullify the 2016 election at a moment in time where America is grappling with enormous debts, threats posed by China and other nations, an exploding Middle East. The problems are endless before we start considering, what's really going on with this story that I don't know if you're following it in Drudge. But in 2004, apparently, there was sailors on the Nimitz spotted, serious people who are not.
Oh, a UFO?
Yeah, and that story is now gaining a lot of traction.
Because they admitted it was real, right?
Yeah. So I mean, that as if we need something else to worry about, right? But we're now in a place here on the 13th of November where alia jacta est, the die is cast, and the folks.
It's like a foreign language episode today.
It's Latin. I know a few words I know in Latin, but we don't have to do anything by Friday. But the Clinton Foundation, and
that's not true. I got to do something before Friday.
Maybe you have, with regards to the Clinton Foundation,
right.
We don't have to do anything. But it's way out of the hands of the executives and even the trustees of the Clinton Foundation, because all of their entities, not simply the main Clinton Foundation, too small to fail, no ceilings to participate, all of these ridiculous charities that are not charities, that are not organized, that are not approved by the IRS, all of these people have been taking money from governments and from private foundations, many of whom have to have a filing in that's truthful by this November 15th, 2019. And the Clintons will probably, they're born to lie. I mean, their business model is you lie from a position of perceived high integrity. You're the former president, you're the former Secretary of State. Who would think that they lie about something this, you fool a lot of the people most of the time with that approach. And then you do what they've been doing, their level best, and that is you obstruct justice.
Yeah.
And you do it by projecting. You accuse your opponent or the target of the behavior that you yourself are carrying out. And so we've seen that tale play out. The Clintons, maybe they have, who knows, another 20 years on the planet, but I'm just throwing numbers around. But they have set, by this activity, in my view, they have set such horrible precedents that they leave no option other than for the Trump administration and people who care about government and care about justice, no option but to make examples of this behavior and do it in a way that really hurts them, so that people who might try this approach in the future will say, no, I'm not doing that. I saw what happened to Bill and Hillary and Chelsea.
Right.
And anyone else who fought us at the very end. I mean, I couldn't believe it was as bad as this nutcase, Ortel with Goodman was saying for so long in all these videos. I couldn't believe that, it was serious, but now I see it, and we have to make examples of this. And then you'll see, it'll be a lot like, this has taken far longer than GE, but it'll be a lot like GE. When I was going around to my friends and saying, you're not going to believe how bad GE is, they would say, nice try, Charles. We know that you decided to retire young, and you have been doing much for a while. And nice, here, little boy, nice idea. And they would all say, in so many words, they say, come on, Charles. It's Moody's reviews and S&P, Fitch. The debt people are pretty good. The New York Stock Exchange is all over their ass. The SEC is on top of them. They're issuing securities. They've got multiple analysts. You're just one dude up in Millbrook, New York. How the hell could you see this?
Oh, it's up.
And it is up because it's in a moment in time now where it's up, but it's way under $40 a share, which is where I.
But it was at like 8 or 9 or something.
It's low twice, strangely, in March of 2009, and recently, its low in both cases was $6.66.
Huh? Really?
Intraday low, yeah.
Well, me, Charles, I'm not going to find anything unusual about that.
I didn't think you would.
There's 33 trades.
That's right. So we've laid a lot of groundwork here, and we've had to be very patient because the unraveling of this deep state coup attempt is far more than just, excuse this language, bitch slapping the Clintons around. It will cause a repudiation in the end of this blind adherence to embracing globalism. You think about, if I could try to dissect globalism and explain why it makes no sense in a few minutes, we'll start with the idea that, what percentage of the surface of the Earth is covered in land? And the
30.
answer is 30%.
Yeah.
So
not 33?
Not 30. They're approximately 30%.
Yeah.
It's like 30 point whatever. So 70% of the planet is by definition ungovernable, right? Because we're never going to agree.
Fish are very unruly.
Right, but we're never going to agree. If we can't agree as between China and the U.S., we're certainly not going to get the whole world together to say this is how we should administer. An overwhelming majority, 70%. No American president has ever won 70% of the vote, as far as I know. So, I mean, that's an overwhelming percentage.
November, they might.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Over 2020, and then you get to the area. Well, let's think about the rest of the 30%. And while the folks at Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard and Yale and Princeton would like to have you believe that all nations are inherently equal, that is not true. The distribution of resources,
right.
The course of history, and the amounts of money that have been invested to make the United States have its infrastructure versus the Democratic Republic of the Congo with its infrastructure are so different that we're not dealing with, of the roughly 200 nations, we're not dealing with a bell curve, we're not dealing with, we're dealing with incredible skewing into the hands of maybe 10, 15% of all nations, have inside of them approximately 80 to 90% of all the wealth. So the idea that you're going to move to an incredibly cumbersome global system where you're going to give, and I've been to Burkina Faso, and I don't mean any disrespect to the people there, but you're going to give the people of Burkina Faso, who have literally nothing left there, equal weighting with the people of Belgium or the people of Bangladesh or whatever. It's just, it's a nonsensical system that will never work, and it's far better to, rather than encouraging some kind of gigantic global bureaucracy to be on top of it and a whole bunch of regional bureaucracy, make each of the countries, to the extent it's possible, great again. I mean, going back in time, as an example, Mali, which is today dirt poor, was in fact a great nation.
We should start offering "Make Burkina Faso Great Again" hats. It's like a big hat.
No, but seriously, make Iran great again, make China great again. We should be encouraging. Just like when you go into this one sport two sports I spent time on as a kid was skiing and tennis, and in both cases, what you're trying to do is you want all the players to aspire for greatness. You want to basically push each other. The best matches I ever had in tennis were when somebody pushed me to a higher level. Right. And similarly in skiing, the most fun I ever had ski racing was when the challenges were daunting. That's when you really separate the good from the bad. And so the approach of saying no, we're going to give out participation trophies around the world to everybody. You can just sit there,
to do less,
but to borrow out a whole bunch of money, so that you could pay to get some worthless degree to keep a professor fat, dumb, and happy, which is basically the system we have here. Don't ask why you're borrowing $100,000 a year, whatever the number is, to get a PhD in social sciences. I mean, it's a system that has really, really been quite foolish and has only worked because there has been enough leeway on the global system to put as much debt as we put on the global system. The amount of debt on the total earth is something like $225 trillion now. That's an awful lot of debt, especially when you start considering that the rich people in countries tend to get to a point where they say, that debt stuff, I don't like that. I don't want to borrow money. I want the freedom to just say, I do what I want to do and I don't have to worry about it. So the level of leverage on the total global system is out of control. The people, the Soroses and others like Soros, know how to make money. He has made a tremendous amount of money in collapses and calamities by betting on them in advance. The people in political power understand that if there's a financial collapse, that will just give them even more of an excuse in this country to take away your guns, take away your choices, And why? I mean, I'm one of these people who doesn't particularly want to be in charge of anybody other than myself. I don't really relish the idea of trying to be responsible for 50 people or 1 million people, or in China 1.4 billion people. I mean, that's the last thing I want to do right now.
Seems like a hassle, 1.4 billion.
It's like total hassle.
A company of 7 was really a problem.
If it's not one thing, it's another, right? You're going to have you satisfy 6 out of the 7 people, and typically the person who you shouldn't really be worrying about too much complains the most. Anyway, so we haven't set this up, but we have watched these deadlines come and go. We've watched Donald Trump find his feet and learn on the job. We've watched a lot of people throw a lot of shit at Trump. What we haven't seen yet is any draining of the swamp. That we have not seen.
Well, maybe a little bit, right? I mean, Ed Buck in jail and Jeffrey Epstein in jail for a week before his fake death.
Right, but I'm talking about the kind of the stuff that we see, as you and I see and others see who watch the show, as being an obvious approach. I mean, you was joking on the phone with Fabian this morning that he was laughing, bringing up that if you really want to, the lesson of this period is if you really want to make money, the last thing you should do is work for a company. You should set up a charity, or even better, a religion. And you just steal as much money as you want, and people will say, "Isn't that nice? Look at Bill Clinton. They're so selfless. I mean, they're just amazing what they're doing, lowering the price of HIV/AIDS drugs and caring about climate change. They deserve to have $250 million for that. Why not? So." We've been able to lay the groundwork here with these many presentations, and the facts are out there, and a lot of governments are watching this now. And the Clintons and their people have a very simple choice. Do they want to just win, or do they want to? Lose, or do they want to lose fugly?
Wasn't Hillary saying like everyone's asking her to run for 2020?
Yeah, because we believe what she has to say, of course.
Right.
At this stage, it's kind of like, who was the boxer who did not retire gracefully? Was it Foreman, I think?
George Foreman kept coming back when he was like 45 and fat, and he's like, what is he doing? He's selling grills.
But now he's made a lot of money doing that, actually.
Yeah, but
in
he should have been boxing at 45.
Exactly. It's not a great idea. So for Hillary, she is in a moment of she may not appreciate it, and I think she's her own worst enemy in the sense that she and Bill and Chelsea believe that they are smarter than everybody else and they shouldn't listen to anybody else. And after all, you offer criticism and they can say, well, were you a senator? Were you Secretary of State? Do you have a PhD in diarrhea? No, I don't. But that doesn't make me a complete idiot. And so we're now sitting there where the Hillary's got to decide, does she stand for election in New Hampshire by Friday?
Is that the last
deadline? And 26th.
This Friday is the deadline to enter the
New Hampshire, be on the ballot.
She's definitely going to do it.
I think so.
She's definitely going to do it.
I think so. She's then going to say, "Look, see, these indictments are political retribution."
Exactly.
And then
that's the only reason to do it. Buy herself another 2 years of not going to jail.
Right. Well, except that this time, however, there's the issue of making an honest mistake. Which people do, and these tax forms are complicated, and the supporting schedules are complicated, and then the forms that you need to file in every state and every international jurisdiction are also complicated. Many are in different languages and different currencies and stuff like that. So you could construct a case, maybe, if a well-intentioned person was always using their legal name, always using their proper address and phone number, always being straight on there, getting a real audit.
You could just tell them that Tiger doesn't speak English.
That's right. My accountant doesn't speak arithmetic. Sorry, this is in gibberish. But when you've been called out, as I've been doing tirelessly since February, March 2015, and you haven't answered your critics. And it is actually a serious crime to send something in the mail that's false and materially misleading, signed under penalties of perjury. When you do that again and again and again in amounts involving billions of dollars, while at the same time people who make small mistakes, whether it be Michael Flynn or Corinne Brown, relatively small mistakes, less than $1 million, or go to federal prison for 5 years, you put the justice system in a place which maybe is intended by the Clintons and the Obamas, to put it in a place where they want to crash the system. They want to make people fall prey to the idea that there can be no such thing as justice under a system of American law, because American law is built on precedents that were set when there was racial inequality and slavery and this, all that argument. That could well be the intention here, to overwhelm the system and then be the only people there able to sweep up the mess and then impose, their own brand of mayhem
Right.
in the Clinton states of America, which I don't think we're going to get to. God help us.
Yeah, but that's really the Hegelian dialect, right? They create a problem and then they offer the solution.
Right. They're in the merchants of misery. That's what they're doing.
Adam Schiff is doing that today in the hearing. He's like, I created this mess and now I'm putting it to a stop.
Yeah.
What was that about?
I don't know. I'm going to have to check on it. I'm going to be on the radio at 9:15 tonight, so I better have to watch the news and see what happened today. One thing.
What happened?
Yeah, exactly. I do want to mention this one point that I'm trying to coin a phrase, and if people disagree with me. But in the old ancient days, in medieval days, there was something called feudalism.
Yes.
With feudalism. And I'm arguing that this style that's been sold by the Grubers and the Clintons and the Obamas is feudalism.
Right.
It makes no sense. But, if you keep people running around, give everybody 13 BlackBerries, have them fly around the world to conferences, let them write nice reports to one another, let them freak out because the world's going to end in 12 years while you steal all their money. It's just, and encourage people to borrow as much money as possible, even though they have no hope of repaying it. This is really completely irresponsible, in quotes, leadership by the so-called virtue signaling woke globalists. And it really is time for responsible people who've been around, and I'm not just making a push because of my age, but people who've seen more than a 22-year-old or a 16-year-old in the case of this Greta Thunberg or whatever her name is, to actually reflect on a longer period of life, think more comprehensively about evidence, try to put that evidence together into a working theory that could make sense. And you look at this and think of the number of people who are wasting, and the trillions they're wasting with this unregulated globalism. Think of the UN. All these high and mighty people talking about the UN this and the UN that, and a lot of the most egregious abuses of law and order have occurred in places where the UN has sent their blue helmets.
Oh, exactly. The UN is behind it.
Yeah, exactly. So, you look at this, and then you look at a company like GE, which, had they done a few things correctly, let's say, after Welch downsized in 1982, if they had winnowed the company down and said, look, we're not going to be in 150 countries, and we're not going to be in 400 different businesses, we're going to just concentrate on being truly excellent in a few things and see what we can do. And when we have extra money we don't need, we can't reinvest, we'll give it back to the shareholders. Had they done that, they would not be in the place they are today. Had General Motors done that, it wouldn't have had to go bankrupt. And you can go through a long list of big names that embrace this unregulated globalism. And in every case, what you find is the leader of the big name, if they didn't go to prison, like Kozlowski at Tyco, ends up with a lot of money. Immelt gets $500 million for nearly bankrupting GE under his watch.
Good job.
Yeah, hey, here's $500 million, why not?
But the UN, you think about that, they've got Saudi Arabia as they're on the Civil Rights Committee or the Human Rights Committee. I heard that they're going to appoint Gerald Nadler as the nutritionalist for the UN.
Exactly, right. It's just, it's not united. Many of the places are not, in fact, nations, but dictatorships. And it hasn't, to make the case that without the United Nations we would have been a lot worse off, you're in the business of fortune telling. I think we have to look at the facts and ask ourselves, in how many nations on Earth right now does the United States have military bases and troops?
Something, right?
Over 100.
Yeah.
If the UN were doing such a great job, we wouldn't need to have over 100 nations with U.S. forces. And it's not out of a sense of isolationism, but it's out of a sense of watching some of the recent stuff on television, the Wounded Warriors getting together. Obviously, it's horrible to die in a military conflict, but in some ways it's worse to be grievously wounded with children and a wife, and then live for 40 or 50 years without your legs, or maybe with a mind issue or whatever. And so we shouldn't be agreeing, as that idiot McCain did, that we're going to be in the Middle East, for a century or whatever, because it's easy for him to say that as a 70-year-old,
He's gonna
right?
die, yeah.
Yeah, well, and he had an unfortunate experience during Vietnam, but he really led a charmed life. He was from a big military family, and he managed to marry well and
Got to blow up that whole aircraft carrier.
Yeah, and he paid some consequences, but I kind of agree with Trump on McCain. I think that he is not a hero.
No, I agree completely.
And for what he did at the end of his life, he's a horrible person.
I think he's been a horrible person through most of his life by the account of anybody who I've spoken to who has dealt with him or knows him.
So with that, why don't we've got a few things to talk about today that are crisp and clean, and I guess I actually like caffeine, so there'll be caffeine in it.
Krispy Kreme, you brought
crisp,
donuts?
no, crisp and clean.
Ah.
And
Did you know they made them close the Krispy Kreme on 23rd Street? This is a true story. People were complaining that the whole block smelled like donuts, so they forced the Krispy Kreme to install some gigantic ionizing machine, and everyone was like, oh good, now it smells like garbage again.
I know. And then they said, why don't we have the homeless shelter come here? And, yeah. I mean, to talk about, they ought to have like the opposite school of management. There's certain people who are just so horrible. Like in charities, you get the Clintons. You say, like, let's study the Clintons, and basically everything they have done with their charity, you will do the opposite of. And let's look at New York City and Mayor de Blasio. Everything that you have done, Bill, is the opposite of how you should manage a big city. Same for California, the governor. But yeah, it just makes no sense here. So why don't we go to the next page, if it's okay? Sure. For the people who are joining us for the first time, this is a different type of a journey. We are not Jake Tapper and Stephanie Rule yelling at you and telling you how smart they are and how stupid you are and selling you a whole bunch of bullshit. We knew this was a complex topic. We were not trying to, in the outset, we were not trying to make it simple at 7th grade level stuff, which I've been told, I won't say by who, that's an approach that some of the news media do take, that to get a wide audience, they dumb everything down to make it really, really simple. Our approach here was to try to help the law enforcement armies around the world get energized to do something about this massive set of frauds, and also to enlist the aid. And so many people have been so very helpful to us, and thank you for that. Thank you for your continuing financial, moral, and other support. What we were trying to do here is get people to use their own minds and eyes and look at this evidence for yourselves, and then start sharing it. And we've had that happen. This evidence has been shared around the world. There are files that have been built and sent all over the place, and great progress has been made. But what we do, unlike people I was just on this topic, I happened to be watching Ari Melber on The Beat. And the reason I did that is I turned on to Fox, and the Brett Baer, I like Brett, but the talent that appears on that, particularly the guests and the panels, are just wacko bird. Some of them. And they had a woman who described herself as an old millennial, who was opinion editor for the New York Times, who was talking complete smack.
Yeah.
And I don't turn into Fox to listen to that kind of stuff. I mean, if I want to listen to complete smack, I go to MSNBC, which is why I went
Ari
to
Melber.
And
yeah.
Ari Melber, he has the MSNBC way of speaking to you. Now, Jason.
Yeah.
Now, you wouldn't really be saying that. He actually does it just like, you wouldn't really be so dumb as to think that your position is accurate. I mean, very condescending.
And also out of his mind. The first time I ever saw that guy was when Dr. Corsi was on his show, right when the whole Mueller probe was kind of focusing on him. And Melber opens the segment by saying, he's like, Robert Mueller doesn't leak, but Corsi leaked. I was like, you jerk. Robert Mueller leaks like like an adult diaper that's been on for 3 days.
Thanks for that image, Jason. Appreciate that.
But it was so stupid. He starts with that message because it's like that's the message he's trying to plant in your head, and it just breezes over it. There's no facts to support that. It's contrary to the actual facts. I dislike that guy.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. I agree with you. But what I wanted to say to our viewership and to you is thanks for your engagement and interest. If you have more constructive suggestions, you can get them to us through my website, through our Twitter. If you go, Jason, to my Twitter page for a sec, I hope what will pop up is the last thing that I put up there.
Yeah, let me just grab that.
Which has to do with Ari Melber. So I was, waiting for the commercial to be over on Fox, some drug or, My Pillow or something like that to finish. And one good thing about Ari Melber, he must not have many advertisers, is that he only has a break of 30 seconds.
Oh.
So yeah, it's right here.
So the best thing about him is he's totally unpopular.
So if you go down to, right here. So this, I just typed here, and as you can see, I have no strong opinions about Sid Blumenthal. But if you hit this John Solomon report, this is his latest. And it's really a must-read and share. It really is. What Sid was doing was so dishonest last night. He was trying to paint John Solomon as a conspiratorial kook. He was saying, John, you have to understand, using all these like really nasty and dishonest. John had to leave the Hill. That's why he's on his own.
When did he leave the Hill?
He set up his own thing. And he was trying to do, he's a wacko bird. He was trying to do business, what Blumenthal was saying. He's trying to do business with Rudy Giuliani, a business venture with him. He's all wrapped up with other kooks like Sean Hannity, and he never knows what he's talking about. His reporting has been completely debunked.
Not true.
None of which is true. And he went on and on and on for 6, 8, 10 minutes on this thing, which only caused me, since I knew what he was saying was rubbish, to wait for John to respond. And here he has with this lengthy piece, which doesn't mention Sid Vicious by name, but it goes through and provides compelling evidence of what was really going on. And I wasn't aware of this, that under the Geneva Convention, which we have signed, and many nations have signed, we agree that our diplomatic corps will not intervene in the internal political affairs of any nation.
Meaning the State Department will not buy 50,000 missiles and send them to Libya?
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Oh, but they didn't do that. They actually did buy those missiles and send them to Libya.
And so in this case, we have the ambassador, and apparently in the leaking out of her deposition was that she felt under such, the Trump team was so mean to her that it caused her to cry and in the deposition, and shouldn't we feel sorry for her or whatever. So this is the real story, that actually this ambassador, and in particular in Ukraine, especially under Obama, we were very aggressively intervening in internal politics in Ukraine. And that's why I've been saying since the get-go on this show that you cannot understand what happened in 1516 without going way back into history and understanding what U.S. policy was under Bill Clinton against the Soviet Union. And as the Soviet Union blew up. You have to know that history. You have to know what we said to the Russians we would do and then what we actually did in Central Europe. You got to know all that, and you got to study all the privatizations to understand who made what money where as these countries went from being portions of the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe and under the thrall of the Soviet Union to being independent nations. So that story by John is, I hope people will read it and understand that John is the hero in this. Sid Blumenthal, I mean, here's a guy who was so, we may make fun of it, and it may actually have turned out to be somewhat true. Here's a guy who was such a partisan, hated Obama so much, that after Hillary and Bill and Obama smoked the peace pipe in June of 2008, where they
didn't inhale.
Vicious and Blumenthal arranged, it said, for the New Yorker to run that cover that depicted Barack Obama and Michelle Obama as terrorists inside the White House after they had struck this détente with the Clintons. And yeah, it's a New Yorker actually, but Turban is spelled with an A. There you go.
internet will fix all these
All
problems.
right. But,
Work with me, Charles.
Okay. So if you look at this, I mean, this is Sid Vicious's handiwork, okay? And in consequence, the Obamas apparently said there will be no Sid Vicious in the Obama administration. He's not going to work with the State Department. And the Clintons said, well, we'll solve that. We'll just have these servers and devices. We'll run all our stuff through that so we can get Sid on a daily basis to give Hillary thought pieces and evaluate classified information. And Vicious was very much involved. We see it. We have the actual product of his emails. It's in part because of his sloppiness that we discovered that Hillary Clinton was using a private.
How did his sloppiness?
Well, because the Romanian, whatever his name is, the Griff. Guccifer.
But they say that's not real.
Well, they can say what they want, but the fact is that incident, however it may have happened, is the incident that led to the revelation, and it was by hacking into Sid Vicious's email that they found all this stuff. And so it's what we have not yet, because we have never had a serious.
I bet Obama did that.
Well, we've never had a serious. Who knows? Maybe we've never had a serious investigation of this mishandling of classified information to date that's in the public domain. It has, I think, been a purposefully gamed investigation, as I'll explain. But here's a guy who was so nasty. The Obamas said, you're banished. And the Clintons said, oh, yeah, I run this thing, Brock. He's going to be very much involved in our process.
Wow.
And now he's dissing. The guy who wrote the recent book, he threatened to sue the publisher on that. He's landing on John Solomon with attacking him on MSNBC. And nobody's standing up to this bully. I mean, he's a filthy piece of shit, in my opinion.
No, that's deserved to say. Although I will say this New Yorker cover is the one bit of accurate reporting that I'm aware of that he's ever done.
Yeah. I mean, you could imagine how, as the English would say, the Obamas would be a little cheesed off at Sid
Well, I
Vicious.
don't understand how people didn't lose their minds. If you did that today, it would be like, deplatformed everywhere, hate speech, prosecuted, you could probably get beaten up over that.
You get used to living in the outdoors over there in San Francisco.
Exactly. They're trying to institute that policy of mandatory urination in the streets. You saw that guy who's 39 became the district attorney. He was raised by Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn.
32.
32? He's 39.
Is he 39? I thought he was 32.
39, yeah.
Yale Law School graduate?
Yale Law School, Rhodes Scholar.
Was he a Rhodes Scholar?
He was a Rhodes Scholar. He was adopted by Bernadine Dorn and Bill Ayers because his father was arrested for blowing something up. He was part of the Weather. He was driving a getaway car when they blew something up. He was part of the Weather Underground. He's still in jail. Or he was in jail when he was growing up.
There's a great guy to put in charge of this.
Absolutely.
Why not?
Never prosecuted a case, funded by Soros. This is the subversion of the legal system because it just gets in under the wire and nobody knows, and then they'll use that guy to indict somebody more important and do something strategic. They're putting all these chess pieces on the board, and a pawn could take out the king if it's played right.
Yeah, it's not good.
Not good.
So we only have a few slides today. Let's start with that ambassador. Okay, her name is Marie Yovanovitch. All right, and what I've done here is just to overlay her early career, her early known career, according to a State Department bio that's referenced in Wikipedia that I looked through. In May of 1998, people may not understand that was really very close to the low point for the former Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union blew up in 92, it took a number of years for it to really get ugly. And I think as many as 10 million people may have died of starvation,
really?
And the whole place just really blew up. And this lady, Marie Yovanovitch, between May 1998 and May 2000, was the number 2 on the Russian desk in the State Department as Russia blew up. Now, I'm not blaming her for that, but I think it is relevant that her parents were both Russian, so they fled the Soviet Union. In theory, they fled the Nazis, according to her bio. She was born in Canada. She was raised speaking Russian and was only naturalized as an American citizen when she was 18 years old.
Huh.
Right? So the point here is it's relevant, to understand if you were doing a background check on somebody like this, you'd be saying, all right, what are this person's extended family in the former Soviet Union? Did they originally hail from Ukraine? Are there ties to, you'd want to check all this kind of stuff if you were entrusting the security of this country to somebody like this person, especially remembering that the Soviet Union had I've been to one of the bases, I've flown into it, the Kharkiv in the north of Ukraine.
One of the what? Bases?
The aircraft, it's now a commercial airport, but it's a gigantic airport where they used to keep the Soviet Union's nuclear bomber fleet. And so Ukraine had a lot of nuclear weapons in it, and the process of transitioning those and making sure they didn't go to the wrong place or whatever, that was delicate diplomacy. So she's in D.C. There's a gap in her resume. Maybe she had a child or something, but there's a gap from between May 2000 and August 2001 where it's unclear what she was doing. Now remember, in this time frame, that's when Mark Rich was pardoned on January 20th, 2001. That's right before 9/11. And right before 9/11, she goes over to Kiev, to Ukraine, where she's the number 2 in the mission. And my understanding from people who've worked in the State Department is, yes, the ambassador in the country speaks for the President of the United States and is an important person, but the person inside the mission who really makes things move is the number 2. And that's what she was in Ukraine for 4 years, almost 4 years, almost exactly 4 years. And why is that significant? Because in that time frame, the daughter of one of the former strong people of Ukraine, hitches up with the Clinton Foundation, with Bill Clinton specifically, to do this Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS inside Ukraine. It begins in 2004, and if we hit this link here, that's from that lady's website.
Is AIDS a problem in Ukraine?
A massive problem.
It is.
Yeah. So the problem in Ukraine, and it's I think it's good. This is Elena the Pinchuk Foundation. Her maiden name I think is Franchuk. And there's if you go through this.
Now wait a minute. Who's Victor Pinchuk?
Her husband.
Right, but I think I hear Lee Stranahan in my head when I hear that name. And look, they've got a super techno crane back here for some reason. Yeah.
So if you just scroll quickly through this, you'll see.
Oh, it's a Russian knockoff of a super techno crane.
On and on and on. Talks about if slowly right there. Yeah. How actively they got involved. You keep going slowly through it. We did this. We did that. The only problem is, Elena, that in this time frame there was no Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative. It just didn't legally exist as a charity. But here's all this stuff that she's writing about what she did with the Clinton Foundation in Ukraine. And then look here. This is the main partners of Clinton HIV/AIDS initiative procurement are CIPLA and what's the next one?
Ramboxy.
You're bragging that you were
Aspen. What is that?
Aspen is a South African company that got into some trouble. But all of these, CIPLA, Ranbaxy, Hetero, and Aspen, all have issues with the quality of their drugs. And this effort on behalf of the Clinton Foundation, there was no Clinton Foundation HIV. There's no evidence that the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, Inc. ever received lawful, validly authorized federal tax exemption from the IRS. There's no evidence of that. There's no evidence that they perfected the supposed merger on December 31st, 2005, that was done properly. In contrast, there's abundant evidence that their activities were not policed properly, not structured properly, not structured lawfully, that they failed the organizational test and the operational test. And here's this daughter of the former strongman of Ukraine still bragging about her relationship with a charity that doesn't lawfully exist.
Right.
Right?
And Pinchuk, he's just like a super billionaire.
Yeah, and so the idea that the number 2 person in Ukraine representing the United States, that this Marie Yovanovitch, or whatever her name is, would not know about Bill Clinton and Ira Magazine or entering into partnerships inside Ukraine with the daughter of the former strongman of Ukraine is preposterous. Of course she knew about this. And the issue here is she knew about it and she didn't do anything about it. Because the correct thing to have done as the ambassador, number 2 to the ambassador, would to say, listen, we got a former president of the United States. I got no evidence that this Clinton Foundation has any authority whatsoever to fight HIV/AIDS anywhere. What the hell is it doing in Ukraine? And what the hell is Clinton really up to, concocting these deals in Ukraine and elsewhere? And there have to be records of all that. So this is the press release, and we look here, if we hit this thing, Jason, the second, yeah. This is the press release. It's still up on the Clinton Foundation website, November 27th, 2005, on a Sunday, if that really was a Sunday, from Ukraine. Here's Bill Clinton in Ukraine around Thanksgiving 2005 talking horseshit because he's signing, I'm happy to be in Kiev signing this important agreement, extending the Clinton Foundation's work. He has no authority to sign any agreement. He's not a trustee, a director, or an executive or agent of the Clinton Foundation. There is no such authority to do this kind of work with the government of Ukraine. It's total rubbish. And what did our State Department know about Bill Clinton's activities, not simply in Ukraine, but around the world in the guise of his foundation? Likely, when you get into it, unless they burned all those files too, likely there's a lot of paperwork where every time a former president of the United States travels internationally, there are records. The Secret Service has records, the host recipient country has records.
Pencil scratchings on Jeffrey Epstein's flight log.
Exactly, things like that. How did he get to Ukraine? Who flew up to Ukraine? Wouldn't shock me if Epstein didn't fly him to Ukraine.
Right.
Wouldn't shock me at all.
Drop some dead bodies out of the plane on the way back.
Well, and there's a lot of beautiful, there were fewer than there used to be after Epstein got there, but there were
Well, wasn't there actually a Ukrainian pilot who Epstein...
Yeah. Is it Czech or Ukrainian?
Right, but he's very interested in pilots and planes that have doors that open in the back, so you can...
Right, and islands.
Islands
and Girl Scouts.
You know that John Mark Dougan claims to have videos from the Epstein dungeons, and he's reviewed 7 out of 700.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And he got poisoned a week after that.
Really? Where does he live?
He's in Moscow. I just spoke with him this morning. He said he's okay. But there's that.
He must have an iron constitution. Well, anyway, so let's keep going into the next page, really. So let's go back in a little bit to the link here. This is Michael Smith's work, and I commend it. I mean, at the time, there was so much going on all at once that I really didn't dwell on all the different links and things. Here's right before the election, 2016. This is a very lengthy post. It's worth rereading, but the headline is that the Clinton Foundation was a joke, a bad joke. It was not a lawfully organized foundation. A lot of people knew this. The Clintons and the Obamas did their level best to obscure the truth and got Hillary confirmed in the Senate on the basis to be Secretary of State on false pretenses, then set her up, gave her the approvals to run the State Department with no inspector general, using 100% of the records went over unsecure servers controlled by her, using unvetted devices. I mean, there's no way. I mean, if Donald Trump...
Sure, it was convenient, though. It was convenient, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Staying out of jail has some convenience to it.
Right. But, so this is, for later reading, this is something that, and all the links are really worth, for people who doubt that this is a mess, go ahead and read just this one and read some of the links.
People can't read, Charles.
So if we go back into the slide, this is an excerpt from a memo that Maura Patley, who is the acting CEO of the Clinton Foundation, on the 11th of February, 2015, sent to Bill and Hillary and Chelsea, saying, as you know, of course, the head of Chai and Ira Magaziner, this doesn't say it the way I'm going to say it, so they stole $23 million. And instead of reporting them to the authorities, we said, well, we'll cover it up. We'll just steal from the endowment and we'll cover it up. Simple. This is in July 2008. So by November 16th, 2008, there's no way that Valerie Jarrett, I mean, if she knew how bad this was and nonetheless signed the MOU, then she's really stone cold stupid. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt and say that her eyes were on the prize of Barack Obama being president and she being the most powerful person perhaps on the planet. because she was really running things. That's what she was focused on. She was not focused on the Clinton Foundation.
She looks like she should be running the PTA. I don't understand.
She had a naturally large amount of power under Barack Obama. Well, on the 5th of January, Jason, 2009, this guy Kendall needs to be investigated. He needs to be disciplined. I think he needs to get the Michael Cohen treatment. This guy figures in at every twist and turn of the Clintons' criminal career. This guy is centrally involved. Here's a letter that he writes as Hillary is trying to get confirmed. At this moment in time, the Clinton Foundation is lying to the regulators in New York. This thing right here.
Do you want it?
The Judicial Watch, yeah. They're lying to the regulators in New York, where she's still the senator. They're lying. It doesn't come out that clearly when I was trying to do it as well. But this is a letter basically on Williams and Connolly, basically trying to pretend, as they always do, that they're going the extra mile, that they're going to, in abundance, they really want to help and cooperate. And the reality is, that's not true at all. I mean, this guy, if he did not know the perilous state that the Clinton Foundation was in, remember, he's the one who incorporated it. You know, he is a two-faced, bold liar. And this is a letter saying, you know, we're going to go the extra mile and we're going to disclose everything and you can trust us, don't worry, you know, we're fantastic. and not telling the essence of the truth, that the Clinton Foundation has had its authority to operate its most important high visibility piece, Clinton Health Access Initiative, the Clinton HIV/AIDS Initiative, was involuntarily revoked on March 31st, 2008. That's pretty material. I would be saying, dear Mr. Whatever, Hillary Clinton respectfully withdraws her nomination from Secretary of State because there's no way she can get across
due to
the line.
massive criminality.
Because we don't want a felon representing the United States. So when you put this together, I mean, we have to give the Clintons deference, we're told. We have to give, you know, get special treatment here and special treatment there, because if you don't give them deference, you have to put them in jail for being criminals. Oh. So they try this thing, they bamboozle the Senate on the 13th of January, they lie like crazy. She gets sworn in on the 21st of January 2009. Then she leaves the State Department. I remember when I left my first serious job, and I had all these things I wanted to keep, including, you know, memos I'd written and
furniture,
stuff. Nothing
the
like
building.
That. No, stuff that my work product, stuff that I was proud of having written or whatever. And the firm said, no, this is our property. You can't have it.
Right.
And you know, the notion that the Secretary of State, this one of the smartest lawyers in the world, right? She's on list after list, year after year, smartest person in the world, leaves the state and says, oh, by the way, I have all of my records, and I'll give my work-related records back to you when I want to. I mean, it's outrageous. People would not, and the problem with this is that having gotten away with doing that, mind you, somebody should have landed on this person before she got her first day on the job as Secretary of State. They should have said, listen, you've never held an executive role in cabinet. These are the rules.
Don't steal anything.
Yeah, you can't do that. All the records are going to be right here, and you can't use your cell phone or BlackBerry in a skiff, and no, we're not going to let your husband have access to all this confidential stuff while he's running around the world with the foundation.
What if I buy one on eBay and type, my address is Hillary Clinton, don't put any hacking software on the BlackBerry?
Exactly.
That's got to be secure.
Yeah, exactly. So just the notion that she would do this, and then moreover that for 4 long years, 4 insufferably long years, nobody in this State Department that's so concerned about Trump's behavior, none of those people would be saying, now hang on, Bill is flying around the world. He knows his wife's schedule. He's operating a foundation. He's raising money from governments that want favors out of the United States of America. He's operating in places where corruption is legendary. And he has his run of the State Department, you know, and and Hillary Clinton's confidential email and all that stuff is lying around the coffee table and the desks at the various mansions of the Clintons, and we're not going to do anything about it. You're really concerned as, you know, junior level, medium level State Department person about what Donald Trump might have said on a phone call
Your opinion of what he might have said.
Yeah, you're really concerned about that, but you're not concerned that the Clinton Foundation has never had a viable audit, is taking money from governments and not disclosing it, and that the Clintons somehow, by using a charity, went from being technically bankrupt to being centimillionaires. You're not concerned about that, but you're concerned about Donald Trump. I mean, it's just preposterous. Then, on the 2nd of November, 2013, by amending the bylaws, the family, the Clinton crime family, attempted to take control of the Clinton Foundation. But and they told people that don't worry about it, told the trustees, look, we control this thing. We'll make all the decisions. Don't you worry. You're just a name on the door, on the stationery. We'll deal with everything.
How do you respond to people telling you, don't worry about it, Charles?
That's when I start worrying more.
I'm talking to you because I'm worried about this. Don't tell me not to worry.
Exactly. Don't tell me what to think.
Yeah.
So then this guy, Kendall, like a bad penny, he turns up again in this whole controversy of where the email, what happened to the emails. He turns over, Hillary's lawyer turns over what purportedly are all work-related emails, right? And then, however, I began to, Schweitzer was before me, but others began to say, oh, wait a minute, what the hell's going on with this Clinton Foundation? And people have seen this story in Breitbart, and I wrote it for Steve Bannon, and it was a pleasure dealing with him. And then Hillary announces on the 12th of April. Now it gets to the interesting part. If we flip on the 6th of July, 2015, an investigation ultimately was instigated by the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community. If we hit this link here to Compass Rose, now mind you, this is the law firm that is in theory representing the hypothetical whistleblowers,
right.
The anonymous whistleblowers, right?
Right.
And if we look down, let's look at the page. Before we talked about, if we go to the second guy, Charles McCulloch, okay? That gentleman is the person who was the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community. He's the person under whose watch the investigation of Hillary Clinton's email arrangements was launched by him.
Nice.
All right? And the person who worked directly for him, if you go up the page, is this guy. He worked in the intelligence community, and he also had worked as in the Inspector General Intelligence Community. He also had worked for Schumer and for Hillary Clinton. Okay? There are only 3 partners in this Compass Rose law firm, and 2 out of the 3 of them worked centrally on this Intelligence Committee investigation of the mishandling of Hillary's email. So when I at first caught wind of this, I said, and this other guy, Zaid, who is the person on January 30th, 2017, less than an hour after Sally Yates was fired, the acting attorney general, he's the one who tweets out, coup has started.
Then he booked his tickets to Disneyland.
Exactly. So these 3 are the ones representing the whistleblowers who cannot be named. And let's think, though, let's go back into the slide for a second. We're back now on July 6th, 2015. And by July 10th, 2015, this investigation, which is called mid-year exam. Now, it's been a long time since I went to school or thought about school, but I always regarded mid-year exams as...
Not that big a deal?
Yeah, because you could generally didn't count.
The final. Yeah.
You want to ace the final, and mid-year,
They like code names like that have a lot of... And when you mention Compass Rose again, I can't help but think about the Arkansas Rose law firm, and is that someone who knows if, this is a law firm with Rose in the name, let's hire them. We've got some CIA stuff to do. I don't know. But if you hit this link on the FBI vault, this is, when you go through it, and you read it, I wish the FBI would go and put some, maybe they were too busy actually finally doing the Clinton Foundation stuff, but I wish they'd put this stuff together in chronological order so that... I wish they'd actually investigate something. Would be more my wish if we had only one.
Right, so here's 36 parts so far, maybe more are coming, leaked out or sent out by the powers that be at the FBI, study this is what we were looking at. And originally, I thought, well, Hillary announced for president by April 12, 2015. She probably had figured out how to rig the primaries and the general election by that point. And I originally thought, well, maybe this McCulloch guy is a white hat. He was having none of it. And this investigation happens, so they give it to Comey, and they're really going to, in theory, investigate. Then when I see that these two guys, two of the three partners in this firm that should be disbanded because it's so outrageous.
Disbarred.
Yeah, I mean, is using a fake charity to raise money
that
to
seems
pay
to
themselves.
Be a common thing to do.
Right. Well, when I saw that, I said, no, here's a working theory. What if what they were really doing was saying, all right, we have a problem. The team around Hillary said, we've got a problem. We've been operating this Secret Service system. We've got and there's a lot of people in the State Department back and forth. We need to vacuum up all the records that are inside the executive branch of contacts involving Hillary Clinton with any piece. Let's do this investigation not to put Hillary in prison, but instead to make sure that we have all the evidence,
right,
and we can coordinate the stories of everybody. And when we've been saying all along, investigate the investigators, this isn't a partisan thing. I'm not, I was a Republican, but I don't look at politics from a partisan lens, and I don't intend to support political candidates either. I'm an anti-fraud person, and I look at this, and it is entirely appropriate to go after these people because, yes, they are politicians, yes, they are famous, yes, they are wealthy, and that's even more the reason why we have to go investigate this. It has nothing to do with Trump beating them. It's everything to do with the crimes that Bush and Obama and Clinton have done are so mammoth and the precedent's so bad, we cannot let them stand unpunished.
There's something else that they may have been doing, Charles, and I've come to realize this, just sort of observing the way lawyers think, just knowing what evidence there is allows them to start strategizing about ways that they can do all kinds of things to render the evidence inadmissible, right, to come up with a strategy to counteract it. So that is very, very interesting that lawyers that represent her and all that stuff, people really who think that this is not a big deal have no idea what they're thinking.
Yeah. So they open this investigation, and then Hillary Clinton is still one of 3 Class A directors of the Clinton Foundation through September 9th, 2015. That's her last full day. So while she's running, seeking the nomination, while she's trying to rig, the Mark Elias, her law firm guy, Perkins Coie, top political lawyer, while they're reaching the agreement with the DNC on how to restrict the pathway for anybody else to challenge her, she's still one of 3 controlling members of the Clinton Foundation. So a fact that she certainly didn't disclose to the public and certainly didn't disclose to her political fundraisers. I mean, this is, for a family to think that they can control a public charity when 2 of the 3 of them are lawyers, supposedly smart lawyers, 2 of them went to Yale Law School, and the third has a PhD in diarrhea. I mean, these are not people who have no academic credentials. These are people who should know better and have no excuse. So we motor into the next page, and we take a look here at how the ground was getting hot after that. This fellow Ken Silverstein is a very good writer, and I'd been working with him. He had written something on the Clinton Foundation, so I contacted him, and he had something published the 26th of October. I started the 15th. I started pounding the table about the filing deadline, suggesting that the Clintons had to refile. What's this?
I don't know if that was the link, but I guess no.
Anyway, maybe I get the wrong link. I started pounding the table saying that the Clintons had to refile. They said no initially, and then they did refile. Yeah, here's the piece, yeah. I mean, this is a kind of a direct piece, right? How do you spell apparent fraud? The Clinton Foundation, shady accounting and AIDS. I mean, it's a well-written piece. He's got a clever clever way of writing. He's got a wicked, funny sense of humor as well.
You just went to Boston for a second there.
So it took a while to get people to really take a look at this Clinton Foundation, but Harper's is, this is in Byline and then another one at Harper's. It started rising to the level where people were really interested to examine, what the hell is going on at this Clinton Foundation by October of 2015. If you go back into the Slide, yeah. Then he publishes another one. I say they have to refile. They claim they don't, and then they refile. But they do so incorrectly. We've been over this ad nauseum. Silverstein gets another thing published in Harper's, and all these have a delay. When you do a magazine story, you finish it, and then it takes a while for it to come out. But if you can hit that Harper's link, shaky foundations. And Harper's is interesting because I think
it's bizarre.
But so he gets this piece out, and I think it's pretty good. And people are starting to bear in the primaries. It's almost exactly 4 years ago to the day, almost exactly. And that we were getting ready back then for the primaries. We didn't know who would be the likely Republican. Many people bet on Bush, and of course they did so at their own peril. If we can go back in the slide, Jason. By the 11th of January, and we've covered this in multiple shows, the senior State Department person, an actual whistleblower, not this fanciful person.
Well, that's why you never hear about him.
Yeah, sends detailed written allegations, which are in that FBI vault, which we've covered to the dope, to Jim Comey, and Comey asking them for a receipt and for him to do something about it. This is an important moment because this is when the primaries, the Democratic primaries, have the appearance of being a contest. I mean, Bernie's catching fire. You like Bernie in this time frame. Yeah. Many people were intrigued by Bernie. Even I went to a campaign rally trying to listen to what he was selling.
Charles, you're one of the millionaires and billionaires.
I'm gonna take your shit. But anyway, so he walks in. The whistleblower walks in, and Comey's like, "I'm not gonna deal with this." So the whistleblower comes in later in January. He says, "You know what? God damn it! I want to go into a skiff and explain to you this is a real whistleblower, unlike
getting ignored."
Yeah, a real whistleblower getting ignored. And here we have the fake whistleblowers that Schiff may or may not have met.
He met them.
Of course he met them. But, this guy wasn't coached. This guy came in with you can read the vast portions of the letter that he sent.
Right.
And
he says, "Did you get the stuff?" And they're like, "What stuff?" And then he shows up. But that's the same thing that happened to Kevin Shipp. He sent a message, then he followed up and said, "Did you get my message?" And they literally said, "What message?"
Right.
Then he sent it again, and they said, "What message?" again. Then he walked in and said, "Here it is." Then they were like, "Oh, you're fired."
Yeah, exactly. So Bernie's got a shot, and he's not getting anywhere. And finally, Alana Goodman decides to write a piece featuring me and what I was trying to do with the Clinton Foundation. That gets a lot of attention, all right? And so now we're in a mode where by the May of 2016, it's pretty, I think it was end of May that it was obvious Trump was going to be the nominee. But now we're in a place where they have to do something. And what happens? Obama announces that on the 18th of May that this Yovanovitch person is going to be the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. And then her nomination immediately goes to the Senate. She's confirmed by a voice vote. There's no cantankerous thing in the Senate. She's approved right away. Adams publishes this thing, finally an IRS Clinton Foundation. That's investigation because Marsha Blackburn in this time frame has triggered the IRS to actually pretend that they're doing a Clinton Foundation investigation. She gets sworn in on the 12th of August, this Yovanovitch, as ambassador, and she's in Ukraine, having presented her credentials, working on the ground, the 29th of August, 2016. Zero Hedge publishes my piece about the Clinton Foundation as a fraud of epic proportions. And these final months, September, October, and then it's really 2 months and then the election, are a blur. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. But this woman is over, this Obama appointee is over in Ukraine, and suddenly it's, with her background, her history, people complaining about her, and you'll see in the different links, complaining about her, from Solomon's story, complaining about her meddling against the Geneva Convention inside Ukraine. We're supposed to believe that Hillary Clinton, who had procured the Steele dossier, those people had purchased it in May of 2016 from Republicans who had given up on, we're supposed to believe that they weren't trying to get dirt on Trump in the Ukraine because that's a conspiracy theory.
The thing
right?
is, though, I don't like this idea of calling it trying to get dirt, because dirt is sort of like you find out somebody did something years ago that they don't want you to know. That's dirt on them. This is just making up lies.
Indeed. So you looked at this ground, and I sit back and I say, all right, what are the questions that I would like to see answered in a real investigation? Fortunately, I gave some thought to that. Why don't we look at the final slide? For any investigation to be deemed a real investigation, in my mind, it would have to answer at least just these few 15 questions. I mean, they're not that many, okay? So the initial seed money for the Clinton Foundation, according to Joe Conison's book and other sources, came from what was left over out of the second Clinton inauguration committee that should have filed a report by April of 1997.
You can't do that, can you? Take money from the
It's unclear whether you can do
inauguration?
it, but it's unclear. When you have money left over, but you're supposed to actually file a report within 90 days. That's a law that predates modern election law. That comes all the way back. The founders understood that people close to a president would use the inauguration, a party, as a way to bribe the president. So they made clear that all gifts to the committee would have to be, you'd have to give the name, the amount of everybody, and then you have to give itemized, detailed account of what happened to that money. So out of the first inauguration committee, I think they left with, call it 15 million or so left over. You got to assume in the second they had some coin, they only put 2.3 million, by my estimate, money into the Clinton Foundation from this, likely from this committee. Where's the report on that? I want to see, in the same way that 29 agents showed up at Roger Stone's house, I want to understand the specific steps that the FBI and others took to get this report. Where is the accounting of that money? How much money? Show me the actual Schedule B that was filed by the Clinton Foundation for 1998, where they showed 2.3 million coming from an unnamed source. Who was that source? What was the name and address, the real name and address of that source? Who controlled the bank account of that source? Where are the records of that source? Because one of the people involved with that was Vernon Jordan's wife. Another person was Terry McAuliffe. These are people who later figure centrally in the Clinton Foundation.
Speaking of Terry McAuliffe, Kevin is in the comments telling us that an important date in the timeline. McCabe was appointed deputy director of the FBI January 29th, 2016, and he was in charge of both the email investigation and the foundation investigation.
Yeah.
So that's actually swamp drainage too, that he got fired. We're overlooking, the sort of "what have you done for me lately" attitude, but that's a big deal that he got fired.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the next piece of it is, Williams & Connolly has been in this all along, and I've had experience with law firms working for me on firms I've worked for on multiple projects. You have a lot of latitude when you have, lawyers will spend 12, 16 hours a day when they're working hard, deciding how much time to assign to one project versus the other project, and detailed accounting for all bills rendered by Williams & Connolly to this Clinton Legal Expense Trust, so that we understand what was the evolution of the liability to Williams & Connolly. How much did Bill and Hillary Clinton owe Williams & Connolly in particular, and what was their realistic ability to repay that bill absent an above-market book deal arranged by Williams & Connolly, Bob Barnett, another partner. And we know from Taylor Branch's book, we know that Bob Barnett was tasked late in 92, early in 93, in the first term, the first year of the first term, to think through how to manage the information and records that would be created by Bill Clinton during his presidency and how to monetize that for the family afterwards. So let's see those bills. Then the idea that you can trust a president and a partisan team to make sure that the records relating to the presidency are actually stored in the National Archives without meddling by the Clintons is preposterous. Remember that the Clinton presidency was noteworthy for many reasons, but one reason was that it was the first presidency to begin with the written age, in the written age, and end in the electronic age. So there weren't, the internet really came to the fore in 94, 95 timeframe. So People were just figuring out what to do with the internet.
There's a bunch of papers flying around.
And remember that Ira Magaziner, who figures centrally in this fraud, in my opinion, was Bill Clinton's choice to be the internet czar in the final period of his presidency. So the notion that they might be completely on the up and up, having watched Magaziner and watched Clinton, is just, I don't give them that notion.
Right.
There's much more likely that there was a nefarious plan afoot to figure out how to use the internet, how to use the absence of real law and precedent as a way to hide the incriminating and damaging evidence of what they were doing during their presidency, and beyond that, of what they might do afterwards.
Yeah,
so in 2001, we know from multiple accounts that a lake retreat, a Camp David style, rundown Camp David style retreat in Hot Springs, which is not in Little Rock, it's reasonably far away from Little Rock, was purchased by the Clinton Foundation. We know that to be the case, and there's no authority for the Clinton Foundation to do that. We don't know yet precisely who owned the Hot Springs Lake Retreat. There's speculation that actually Bill Clinton may have had a personal interest in that, in the trust with his cousins that owned that retreat. So how did they figure out the price for that retreat? Where did that money go? What did the directors have to say about it? And of course, they probably said, "Oh, I'll go to Hot Springs in the summer. Sounds good to me." And how much of this incriminating information that may have disappeared from the White House was in Hot Springs? Then these vaunted investigators have to explain precisely, with landing hard on Comey, Mueller, and Rosenstein, how in the hell did these four people happen to miss an obvious escalating Clinton Foundation fraud from February 2001, they're not all starting at the same time, through sometime as yet unknown in 2005. How did they miss that? And don't tell me there aren't extensive records in the FBI of what was originally in files and how files have been manipulated, what might have been culled from files. Why was a decision made not to go full bore against this Clinton Foundation back in 2001, frankly? It should have been obvious before 9/11 that this was a fraud. There were no audits, nothing had been built yet, a lot of money had been spent, the paperwork's all wrong, it's not really an organization. It shouldn't have been that difficult. And what leverage did the Clintons have to stop the Bush administration from doing something about this? This is something we need to know. Then, in 2004 and 5, the entity, the Little Rock facility, was finished by November 18th, 2004. Ordinarily, when you put a building in service, when you take a building from something that's really a collection of bills that have been put in by various vendors and paid by the entity, you have to decide the value. Just because you sign up to build something and people charge you $5 million for it, or 165, whatever the number is, that doesn't mean that 165 million gets put in as the cost of the building. You have to hire an expert, team of experts, they have to look at comparables, they have to think it through, and they come up with a real defensible value. Where is that report? And if they didn't do such a report, that's a gross dereliction of duty. Who made the call, we're not going to do that? Where is all the correspondence back and forth on this Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS initiative incorporated March 24th, 2004? Where's the application for federal tax exemption, the 1023, the supporting materials, the back and forth questions and answers? Where is all that stuff? Then, one of the reasons I suspect the Clintons got cover is that it was George Bush's idea to put, at first, $15 billion into something called PEPFAR to buy HIV/AIDS medicine and distribute it around the world. And as a guess, that was not done properly. Lots of money was stolen, perhaps bad drugs were distributed. We want a full accounting of that. How much money? It's not a political issue, it's a national issue. How could we be so stupid as to do what we did do and then let people likely were harmed, grievously harmed, according to Catherine Eban, Bottle of Lies. 10 million people a year may die for the next 30 years because of this nonsense. And so this is not a minor thing that we just sweep under the rug because it would be too damaging to know about it. How much did Valerie Jarrett and Barack Obama know about all this before January 2009? That's something we need to understand. And then who actually approved the use of these servers? Don't tell me that Hillary just waltzed in as Secretary of State. So, the same person who's quoted in the Podesta WikiLeaks emails back and forth. There's a cabinet meeting, and she's quoted. She sends an email. Am I supposed to go to that? No, you're just fourth in line. You don't go to cabinet meetings. That's why would you do that? You're too busy grifting. I mean, this person decides that all of her stuff she's going to steal. Bring all her records, bring it to her mansions, keep it after she leaves, and with no external supervision, her people are going to cull those records to take the personal stuff away from the government. It's ridiculous. So who authorized that? Who made the call that under Hillary Clinton's 4 long years there would be no Inspector General of the State Department? I mean, here we're talking about a potential delay or the suggestion that we might delay release of authorized aid to Ukraine. That's an outrage.
Right.
But for Hillary, for 4 years, there's no Inspector General. There are pallets of cash going missing in Iraq, $8 billion in Iraq. There's 10 to 13 billion missing in Haiti. There's 150 billion in connection with Iran. And we're going to give Donald Trump a hard time for caring about corruption in a country that's notoriously corrupt. I mean, even Ukrainians they're not going to say, no, it's wrong to say that there's no corruption.
No, they know.
They'll say, we know. I mean, that's what we do here. We've got corruption and we've got chicken Kiev. That's what we got.
Borscht.
And borscht. We got borscht too. And Odessa. Odessa's sort of nice. Anyway, who made the call on that thing? And then for every item of income that the Clintons, everything, Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea, every single deal, investment scheme, fancy job that Chelsea got, every speech, every book deal, every single thing, all of those payments need to be scrutinized from 2001 to the present. Every single deal. To see how much off market were each of these items. We're talking about Schiff is going to try to get President Trump now for corruption, for bribery. If you overpay a former president of the United States for a speech, that's bribery, right? That's what you're doing. I mean, you don't do this because you're sloppy as a publishing house. You're doing it to get favor. So we need to know that. And then for the standard for major donor, one cutoff is $5,000 or more. And people will say, $5,000, that's too low. But actually $5,000, a single gift of $5,000, I don't know how many people do.
They're handing out $5,000.
Yeah, I mean,
Not really.
the top 10% families, their pay per earner is less than $100,000 each. So to give $5,000,
a lot.
To one thing is a lot. So yeah, let's go through every gift of $5,000 or more to examine the person who gave that gift. Did they get a backhander? Did they get a sweetheart deal from USAID? Did they get an endorsement that made their business more valuable? Somebody who exercises professional skepticism has to look at that long list. And then as far as the Clinton Foundation and its quote auditors, for the firm of see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, what assurances were the accounting firms given in writing by which executives and other people concerning the legal status of this charity? Has a law firm ever been forced to write an opinion stating that the Clinton Foundation is validly organized and has at all times operated lawfully as a public charity consistent with its charters from the federal, state, and foreign governments in which it operates? Has a single law firm ever done that? Because ordinarily, donors demand that. Before they give money, they say, yeah, we love you, we trust you, and that's why we want a letter from a law firm that's got its ass on the line, making clear to us that this is a valid charity. And then, this is just a starting list where I'd start in the first half an hour with somebody trying to do an investigation. So then I want to see for every year, we could ignore 97 to 2000 for the moment. We'll get back to that. I'm assuming that was totally crooked. But let's look for 2001 forward, year by year. Give me a list of every single legal entity affiliated with the Clinton Foundation in any way.
How about every illegal entity as well?
Every entity, and a list of every financial account, and who had authority over that account. I want to see that.
I don't know anything about that.
So, it could be that the Clintons, the master con job artists that they are, they've got the election already rigged for 2020, and they're going to take maybe the next 6 or 7 months off, and then Hillary will just ride in on her Hindenburg blimp and go to a couple of events, and then they'll arrange for Trump to maybe not feel very well or whatever, and Hillary will be our next president. That's a possibility. But I hope a higher probability is that Durham and Barr and the brave men and women in this country who care about law and order are going to stand up and say, enough is enough of this bullshit. You know, this is not, you know, you'll give to an American war hero, maybe you'll cut them some slack if they make a mistake. But these are not war heroes. These are fraudsters.
But they didn't do that. They did not do that with General Flynn.
Yeah, these are inveterate fraudsters and con artists who it's quite obvious that the people around the Clinton Foundation can never run it properly. This has to go into a conservatory yesterday. It's not something I will do. It's not something there are plenty of people who could do this. And there then needs to be a full accounting and reckoning to the public. And Donald Trump and his Justice Department and his IRS need to set some examples here. They absolutely need to they need to do it because it's the right thing to do. And if they don't do it, then I think Donald Trump, in the end, can forget about being reelected, because he will not be.
Yeah. Well, I hope he will be. And I hope that they will get all this stuff straightened out. So, Charles, that's the end of our presentation, huh?
I've tried to keep it to 90 minutes as instructed.
Well, there you go. Instructed. I don't know if I'm instructing you. This is my advice for the format to keep people's attention. Well, very nice, Charles. You know, actually, one of the reasons why I'm going to keep this show to 90 minutes is just get it moving through the week. But it's also because at 7 p.m., there's a new show that we're doing on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and patreon.com/Stranahan, which is High Dive with Lee Stranahan. And Lee's going to be speaking tonight about his role in the Oliver Stone documentary, Ukraine Revealed.
Oh, wow. When's that coming out?
I think it just came out because Lee has been promoting it pretty heavily today. And I have to say, I really like Oliver Stone's movies. He's an unusual guy. I've met him actually kind of like 3 or 4 times, like personally, and it's been incredibly, let's say, awkward. He's he's an interesting guy. I don't think he likes me, or it was just sort of like, you know, who the hell is this kind of thing? You know, it didn't go well, the meetings, but he makes excellent films.
I met and then was subsequently on his show, Sean Stone.
Right.
Watching the Hawks. He's a nice guy. Smart
Well,
guy.
he wasn't not nice. The first time I met him, in his defense, was a very awkward meeting that was set up by this Chinese film producer who produced his Snowden film and wanted me to move to China to make all kinds of 3D movies. And he introduced me to Oliver Stone in such an awkward way that Oliver Stone thought I was some like paparazzi or something and basically told me to leave. And the guy was like, no, this is our partner in the film I'm introducing to you. And he was like, oh, whatever. Then the next time I met him was in China. By total random chance, this Chinese producer ran into me in a hotel in China and was like, what the hell are you doing here? And I was there with some other Chinese producer, and Oliver Stone walked in from a flight from the United States and was just like totally like, you know, old guy just getting off of a flight for hours and hours, pissed off, and was just sort of like, you know. And then I asked him a question at a premiere of the film. There's some movie he made about a love triangle of these guys who are growing marijuana or whatever, and he didn't understand the question. But the film should be very good. Ukraine Revealed, and people can see High Dive with Lee Stranahan on Patreon, on Subscribestar. People can sponsor the show there, and they're going to get access to a huge library of sponsor-exclusive content. They're going to get access to these live streams while we're in YouTube jail. There's some funky shenanigans going on with copyright strikes, and social engineers have publicly announced that their goal is to totally deplatform Crowdsource the Truth. So now is the most important moment for people to support Crowdsource the Truth and send a strong message to social engineers that want to manipulate what you're able to see through really fraudulent means of claiming copyright strikes. They're just trying to cause trouble. So please join us on Patreon and Subscribestar. I'll see everybody tonight at 7 o'clock with Lee Stranahan. Thank you, Charles, for another great presentation.
You're quite welcome, Jason. Thank you.
Anything else you wanted to say? Okay, great. See everybody later.